page and web application here. I'm going to let that come and we'll come back to it just a second and see what's going on. But there's the page. Not really sure why it took so long, but this is the template. That's a MVC app, kind of just auto wired together, that is based on the new .NET stuff. All right, so that's cool, and that's the new direction. That's using Visual Studio 2015. But let's do something even more cool. So what I'm going to do now is take this, and I'm going to do um, an application on Mac. So right now I'm in a Mac. If you notice, I'm in a directory called Web Apps, our web application. And so what I'm going to do is I would run npm install -g generator ASP.NET. I'm not going to run it. I've already ran this. This would install a framework for a scaffolding for Yeoman to be able to generate a .NET application. Once you've done that, if you do ASP.NET and hit enter, it will launch a Yeoman generator for .NET. And if you notice, you can see there's console, web applications, basic one application, and web API, a sample application, and class libraries unit test. So all I'm going to do is click web application. It says what's the name of it. I'm going to leave it default. And notice it went through and created a bunch of stuff up here. If you notice here, it tells you to type DNU restore. This DNU again is a utility that's available for .NET environment for the cross-platform environment. And it will, what that basically will do is go through there and install all components that it needs to be able to run this application. So basically we're going to do that, DNU restore, and anything that it needs to be able to run this application. It looks at that project.json file. Again, remember, it had all the dependencies that were required to be able to run this thing, so it restores all those different things that are there. Once that's restored, we'll be able to actually run the project. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to launch Sublime while that's running. And if you notice, you see our controllers. Migrations we'll talk about when we do some of the database stuff. You'll see models that are created for this particular one. So there's 2 models in this one. You'll notice that there's some services, some view models, and some views. And then here's the www folder. You'll also notice that there's the gulp file that we saw before. You'll see a package.json. You'll see the package project.json, which are all those dependencies. And then the startup file, that's the new main file for it. Once you have those things, then you are able to get off and running. And if you remember, if we scroll back up, in order to run this, all you would do is DNX web. So if you type DNX web, this will start the Kestrel web server that's here available with the DNX environment. So notice it says application started. So if you copy this and bring up another web server or bring up another browser, paste that in there, you will see .NET running on a Mac. So there you go. That's .NET running on a Mac. Just to show you that everything's working, if I go into my view, go down to home and go to index, I can come here to say this learn how to build .NET applications and put this is a test. You can now build MVC.NET apps natively on a Mac. Save that. Come back over here, kill this. Control C is how you kill that. And if you remember, there was a step here that was DNU build. That will actually kick off a build for you. So I'm going to do DNU build. That rebuilds the application, copies everything new. Once that's done, use your up arrow to DNX web. It'll fire back up the web server. Refresh the page, and you should see the new change right here. You can now build MVC.NET apps. So again, there it is, running on a Mac, using Sublime, not Visual Studio, to be able to edit it. It's fully open source, fully available. You can actually participate in the project if you wanted to. So I'm going to pull back down the presentation. So here's the commands. If you wanted to see these things, so there's what you can go through. This will show you the version of .NET. This will update the version. This will do a list of all the available options, and you can do help to see what you can do. Restore brings back the packages. Build as a build, and web launches the web server. Why do all this? Well, the big thing is run anywhere. Now, Microsoft has embraced that they want to be able to run on Linux, Mac, Windows. That is awesome. So you're going to run into this phrase, right? When you're out there in the world and people have been using .NET for a while, this is a whole new way of thinking, and there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. Microsoft has said that they're going to support 4.6 going forward, and they're also going to support this core as another way of going forward. So it's going to be slow to adopt, but what I want to tell you is that it's going to happen, and that you need to go ahead and start thinking about it now. Why can I be so confident about that? Here's an article that I find really interesting that you ought to take a look at. This is a game company, and they did some performance tests. And in this performance test, they show .NET, ASP.NET 4.6 on the chart, and then they show ASP.NET Core running on Windows and ASP.NET Core running on Linux. Basically, they did 1.15 million requests per second using Kestrel, running on Windows or Linux. Well, running on Windows, they also got a huge performance on Linux. But basically, that blew away what IIS was doing. So Kestrel had a 2,300% gain over ASP.NET 4.6 running the same thing. I don't know anything about that specific use case and on their testing that they did, but what that should tell you is that there's some massive performance possibility, at least, with using this. If that holds to be true, if there truly is that kind of a gain between using Kestrel and IIS, then you're not going to see people using INS for long, or IIS for very long. So that comment about your manager not wanting to use it, he or she will, because if you get that kind of performance, it's going to be impressive. One other thing that I didn't mention, I mentioned containers at one point in the class, but I didn't talk too much about it. Containers is a virtualization style technology that allows you to have isolation for the different things you build. It's similar to like the things that you would do with a virtual machine, but it's a little bit different. It's all based on a Docker file, and if you notice in the actual Yeoman project, there is a Docker file. So this will allow you to build, this script will allow you to build a VM that can be deployed out on Azure, on EC2, on their ECS container service, or anywhere else that's a container. So basically what I'm saying is it supports containers. That's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to stop this recording. The next one will cover the how to do auto continuous deployment with